What a weekend it was. The weather was incredible. And of course, for me, the story, the narrative about Good Friday and Easter Sunday was uppermost in my mind. And one of the things that really struck me was the importance of the women in the story of the Passion of Easter. And then I read a piece by Paula Gooder. She's the Chancellor at St Paul's Cathedral, one of my favourite preachers. And she drew out a lesson based on Mary, the Mary who was part of that Easter narrative. And this is what she said. This is how she wrote it in the words of Mary. The moment we heard what had happened, we followed him. We did what we normally did. At the awful moment when it felt that the world was collapsing around us, we did what we'd been doing the last few years. We followed him. We followed him to Caiaphas's house and shivered through the long dark hours in the courtyard. We followed him to Pilate's house and listened with horror while the crowds cried out, "Crucify, crucify," all around us. We followed him to Herod's house and back again. And then we followed him to a place we never imagined we would go, to his crucifixion. We stood there on that cold, wretched hill, watching all our hopes and dreams died before our eyes. He sighed, "It is finished." Everything was over. Everything bar the heartbreak, numb and shock. Then we did what we always did. We followed him. Some men we didn't know took his body off the cross, and we followed them. They took him to a tomb nearby, so we followed them. We watched as they buried him. They didn't anoint him or use spices. They were in too much of a hurry before sundown. We couldn't do anything the next day. It was Sabbath. But we thought he'd come back early on Sunday morning before anyone else was up. We would anoint him then. We didn't really think it through. We had no plan about how we'd roll the stone away. It was just us. So we were doing what we'd always done, following him. We were there. People often forget, but we were there. But we were there. And what that did for me was not just about the Easter story and that incredible weekend, but was to think about everyone who is there today in this kind of Good Friday world where we're uncertain about the future. We don't know what's happening. We don't know how long this is going to go on. And constantly people are now talking about when will the schools open? We just don't know. But what we do know is that the people who were and have always been at the front of the line are still there. And the vast majority of them, in primary schools at least, and certainly in the Vine Schools Trust, are women. Of course, there are some men. We stand together. But the majority are women. And you are stepping up. You are standing in the place where you're needed most, whether that's working from home or going into school and looking after key children, key worker children. So thank you again. I don't think we can say it enough. People go out and clap on a Thursday night for the NHS staff and other frontline workers. And we do that, but I don't think we often think, or people often think of the frontline workers as our teachers, our head teachers, our teaching support staff, and so on. All of you need a massive round of applause and will continue to do so. The Archbishop of Canterbury on Easter Sunday said this: "Imaginative hope gives us level-headed courage and a grand ambition when it's based on what we know to be true." Neither the women nor the two disciples had hope when they went to the tomb. Mary was so filled with sorrow, so caught by an utterly reasonable despair, that she could not even recognize Jesus when he stood in front of her. The women went to the tomb in the dark, and there they found the light and hope of Christ risen from the dead. Mary Magdalene turned the disciples' world back to light, That woman who, as the previous Archbishop of Canterbury, Lancelot Andrewes, said, was last at the cross and first at the tomb. So now, he says, there needs to be a resurrection of our common life, something that links to the old but is different and more beautiful. We must dream it because it's the gift of God. Then we must build it in partnership with God. I think we're on a head start within the school sector and certainly within our Vine Schools Trust. And so I finish with the words of the Queen. This year Easter will be different for many of us, but by keeping apart, we keep others safe. But Easter isn't cancelled. Indeed, we need Easter as much as ever. The discovery of the risen Christ on the first Easter day gave his followers new hope and fresh purpose, and we can all take heart from this. I hope you have and will as we step out at the weekend into the new term with all that will mean, praying that God will use our hope, our purpose, our commitment to do what we do. I close this reflection with the words of the Collect on Easter Sunday. Lord of all life and power, who through the mighty resurrection of your Son overcame the old order of sin and death to make all things new in him, grant that we, being dead to sin and alive to you in Jesus Christ, may reign with him in glory, to whom with you and the Holy Spirit be praise and honour, glory and might, now and in all eternity. Amen.